if you are still tied to BAU and you don't allow people to move outside of that BAU, you will never move forward to this place of innovation. And so it's about removing kind of the emotional attachments that we have to business as usual, that space of comfort. Comfort feels good. It's easy. Like I said, it's predictable. And you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable and moving outside of the BAU. Of course, we don't want anyone to be out here making any type, just, reckless decisions. We want you to use the data that you have to assess, whether or not how to move forward and do something new. But you're gonna have to do new things. You're going to have to make space for newness in your life, in your business, in your team. Having a new team member come on, what's the point of having a new team member come on if you're only going to do the things that you did the old way? Like, how are you growing?
We're going to start this thing all right.
Hey. So welcome to Tip on Top of the Tip. I am Zenitra Perry.
And I am INEZ Chimangariso. So if you aren't familiar, every time we do the tip on the tip, we do a value that is a professional value, but it's usually actually a very personal value as well. And we select the value randomly. We talk about what it means to us. So what is the value for today?
So today's value is leadership.
Oh gosh. Okay. Z is the queen of leadership over there.
You already know.
Okay. I'll let you go.
This is my life. It is all about leadership. It is all about building leaders. Obviously, this is a value of mine. And when I think about leadership, it takes me back to even childhood. The confidence queens over here, we're always going to talk about identity. And a big part that I'm seeing now that ties to leadership that I hadn't really thought about previously was dignity. Dignity, self-esteem, confidence, and how those are the foundation for strong leadership, for secure leadership. And I'm not even talking about being a leader at your job. I'm talking about leading yourself to the life that you want. Looking at dignity and understanding how you choose to show up, what you will allow for yourself, what you will not allow for yourself, really then translates to, how you, the esteem of yourself, how you view yourself, how much value you place on yourself, which then leads to confidence. And when you have those three, you're able to take the steps that are necessary to create the life that you want. I heard a quote this past week that loosely says, be who you are until who you are isn't getting you what you want.
Ooh.
Wasn't it good?
Honey, y'all better go write it down. That's good. That's good. Cause because people will lean into it. That's just who I am. It's who you are, getting you what you want in your life.
Getting you what you want.
Come on, you got to change.
And so having that dignity is like, how am I showing up? What will I allow? Is it getting me? Am I getting the life that I want? Yes. Having the confidence to then say, you know what? I'm about to try a new thing. I'm about to do something different, and leading yourself towards the life that you actually want. And that, to me, is what leadership is: being able to make decisions, find solutions for yourself, and then building a track record of doing that so that others trust you enough to follow you to do the same thing. Right. And so we all have the capacity to be leaders, but you have to lead yourself first. You have to lead yourself well in order for others to trust you, to build that credibility, and for them to follow you, to be kind of more of this leader that we're thinking about, whether it's in the workplace, in the community. But you really have to be able to lead yourself first. So leadership, 100% top value of mine.
Yes. Let me tell you, leadership is a very top value of mine too. And I don't think it was something that I decided, right, was a top value of mine. I think in some way it's kind of ingrained, especially when you're the oldest child, right? Because what leadership means to me is you go first, right? Like, you go first, whether in whatever area that is in, whether you're going first there's a coach I follow named Myron Golden, and he talked about how leadership is having the competence for people to actually want to follow you, right? Then having the confidence to be able to show them, right, what following you looks like, right? And then having the character for them to be able to trust that you're the person that they can follow. And I was like, that is on point. Competence, confidence, and character. But I think in all of that, you have to go first. Like, you have to gain the competence first. You have to learn the thing. You have to become well versed in it, right? You have to master something, right? Because why am I following you if you don't even know what you're doing, right? And so for me, it's important. I'm always learning. I'm always trying to master things, even in the smallest problems that I'm solving, right? Even in the smallest problems that I'm solving, I'm like researching. I'm trying to figure out like how other people have done it. How have they been successful? What are the things that they have failed at? So I can gain my own competence, right? Looking to other leaders. So eventually I can lead, right? Also from a place of confidence, right? Because, we talk about confidence all the time. I think what comes along with leadership is the confidence in taking the risk, right? Because if you're going first, you also are taking the risk because you may not have seen somebody else do it. And also, when things fall apart, it's probably going to be on you, right? People are going to look to you, right? So having the confidence to be like, I trust me, I'm willing to bet on me, right? And I'm okay with taking the good and the bad of what happens, right? I'm willing to go first on that. And then the character piece is funny because my husband and I were driving through Philly yesterday. And we just stopped at a stoplight, and there's like a car beside us. And we see this guy walk past the car. Like, I wasn't really paying attention. And I just saw the guy walking back. Next thing you know, they're fighting. Like, the person in the driver's seat is kicking his feet out of the window. The person standing outside is throwing arms, and they're fighting. This is, again, we in a blizzard, y'all. They're fighting. And we're like, what is going on? Like, what is happening? So then the guy who's outside starts to walk away. The guy in the car gets out the car, follows him, and tackles him onto the sidewalk. We in a blizzard, y'all. Neither one of them got a coat on. And we're like, what happened here? What is going on? Like, how did we get here? How did we get here? We just stopped at a light. You know how fast the light is. All this has happened at the light. But I say that because being a leader means you have to go first from a character perspective too. Even when people trigger you, even when people try you, you have to set the standard for how we are going to approach this from a character perspective. And that, I think, is the hardest piece. I tell my daughter all the time, my oldest daughter, I said, you don't tell your sister what to do. You show her what to do. You lead by example. And I think that also is a big part of leadership as well, is setting the example, not telling people what to do, not bossing people around. Because a lot of people think that's what leadership is. It's setting the example from a competence perspective, from a character perspective, from a confidence perspective. You have to set the example. You have to go first and show people what they're supposed to do and what they can get when they do these things for them to want to even follow you. So leadership is a huge value of mine, because I think one of the things that's most important for me as a value is walking the walk. Right. Like, not just talking about these things, but actually walking them out. And I think whenever you're a leader, you are seen as a leader because you are walking it out.
Right. Listen, you are dropping all the gems today. Okay. I don't even know where to start. But what I love about you go first, you said two things. You go first and you talked about risk taking. And we've talked about risk taking a number of times here and what's required in order for you to be able to take risks. So this past week, I was in Tulum, and we went and visited the cenotes, and that's a whole experience. But there is an opportunity for you to jump off a cliff into one of the cenotes. Well, if there's a cliff to jump off of, conceptually, I want to do it.
Yes.
So when I saw it, I was like, okay, I'm definitely doing it. My friend that was with me, she's like, yeah, girl, you can have that. Don't worry about it. Go do your thing. So I walk around there. Now, as I'm taking a step, each step that I take, I'm like, girl, what are you doing? Who said that this is something that you should do? Number one, my mama said it. And when I say that, I mean, my mother is the ultimate thrill seeker. She's the one that wants to jump out of planes, bungee dive, all of the things. She's the reason why I ride roller coasters, not because personally as a child I wanted to, but she was like, come on, girl, let's do it. It's fun. I'm like, okay, I guess. To this day, my mother encouraged me, peer pressures me to get on roller coasters, and I no longer have that need. I've done it. We don't need to do these the rocket launch. I don't need to do that, but my mother wants to do it, and usually I'm right there beside her doing it with her, even if I don't want to. So when I said, who told me to do this? It was really my mother in my head. Like, girl, we got to do this. That's whose voice I heard. So as I walk up there, it's just me and another young lady. And I look over to her and I say, are you scared? And she was like, no. I was like, well, girl, I am. Like, I'm terrified now that I'm up here on this cliff. And so she's like giving me tips on like, how to do it or whatever. And I was like, okay, well, you go first. And she was like, no, you go first. What?
Come on.
You go first. Like for some reason, I thought she needed to lead me there. No, I had to go first. I was first in line. I was already there. She came up behind me. I was looking for some support and encouragement. And she was like, you go first. And I got up there. I'm terrified. I really don't want to do it. I can't chicken out. I don't want to leave, but I don't want to do it. And so our tour guide who was standing on the other side, he's like, just do it. 1, 2. And when he started counting, I was like, okay, well, that means it's time to do it. And whenever he said 3, I took my little steps and walked right off that ledge and jumped into the water. And I just remember the fear. Like I was literally terrified. Like I'm there by myself. Like usually I can at least share the experience with my mom and have her be the re-encouraging, be the encouragement and the support that I need. But in that moment, I had to go first. There was no one to like talk me into doing it, right? It had to be me to do it. And as an entrepreneur, there are so many times that I feel those same feelings of fear and scared and trepidation, but I got to go first. I have to walk off that ledge and jump into the pool, a pool of opportunities, but I have to do it. There's no one that's going to do it for me. And so I was reminded that I am my own leader. And that even whenever I'm afraid that I can still do things and that I will survive, right? You water, there's a splash, but guess what? You survive, right? You live to tell the story. You have the experience that you can now share. And so that ties to risk taking, that ties to being your own leader. And so whenever you say you go first, like literally the girl, I can speak beside me because she was like, you
flashback.
Listen. And so that's really how we have to live our lives. You go first in order to really step into leadership, and it's leadership of self before you can lead others.
Absolutely. Like I feel like in that's what helps you to be able to trust yourself, right? In the same way that people trust you is that you go first, right? And you're okay with the risk of it. You're okay with the side eye that may come with it. Like I know in this stage of our lives, baby, we side eye us and others side eye us.
For sure. Yeah.
Let me tell you.
Like what?
But that's what happens when you are a leader, because you have to be okay with doing the different thing. And that this is so crazy how it goes with the tip. Like
every time.
It's every time. You have to be okay with doing the thing that is different. It's not the norm. Requesting it of yourself, right? And requesting it of others. Like, just that's a part of leadership. It comes along with it. You can't have one without the other. So if you really value leadership, then you value even the notion of, standing out, right? Standing out and not doing the norm, right? Listen, you value that. It's almost to the point where doing the norm feels uncomfortable. It's just like,
I think that is the perfect segue to get us into the tip.
Oh, yes.
We're already diving into it. Give the people
right into the tip. Right on in. So what is the tip for today?
Today's tip is you're not going to be a you me. you're not gonna be a you me.
You're not going to.
And what does that mean? Okay. So this came from a current day story, and it's actually tied to parenting. And my youngest child, my daughter, is such a little rock star. Um, but the way that she shows up in life is not always that of a traditional 7-year-old. She very much feels like a peer in the way that she uh analyzes things, her perspective. And so that requires me to parent her differently. Um, and even in traditional situations like school. This year, yes, this year, it feels like forever ago because we've, come into 2024. But this school year was exceptionally challenging for her. And all of the traditional things that you put in place to try and make it work just was not working. And I had to go completely outside of the norm. I had to unschool my child and to prepare her to be in a better environment so that she can learn. But essentially, the way my daughter shows up is as if she's speaking to me as her parent. You're not going to be a you me. You're not going to put me in the school that's in the zone because it's right there. Also, like, just changing this one thing is not going to work. I need something that is unique, something that is specific in order to create an environment that is conducive to my learning, to my growth, and to my overall well-being. And so that is where the term "you ain't gonna be a you me" came from, but it applies to so many different areas in our lives.
Right. Yeah. And BAU stands for business as usual.
Yes.
Right. Business as usual. You're not going to business as usual me, which I think is, if it's one set of folk who definitely are going to give you're not going to business as usual me, it's going to be your children. Okay. They're going to be the ones to be like, baby, I don't care what you did and what you thought this was going to be. It's not business as usual. Okay. Like, we're doing a little something different. And I think, from a corporate perspective, I love this tip because it requires you to really stand in, I think, your values, right? And uphold your expectations of others to see you, right? And those values. When I think about, a lot of times you can go into a corporate culture and they already have the way they work, right? It's funny. Who was I just talking to? A friend of mine. She was talking about so she works for a nonprofit, and nonprofits have a culture, right? And in her nonprofit, a lot of times the leaders who are there don't want you to question some of the systems or some of the things or previous decisions they've made, right? That may not make sense right now, right? And so the culture is, just don't bring it up, right? Just don't bring it up. However, they have a new employee. So the new employee comes in, he doesn't know the culture, right? And so he's coming in like, why are we doing this? Why do we have this? Why are we still paying for this? What does this make sense? And so everybody's looking like, because everybody has wanted to say that, but because he doesn't know the culture, he's coming from a place of just openness, right? This is his value. Let's not do things that are inefficient. I have a value of this. Let's not do things that are inefficient, and let's bring it up, right? And so when you're in a place of you're not going business as usual, me, it doesn't matter what the culture is, doesn't matter what the system is. It matters what your value is. And if my value is like, we're not just going to sit here and spin our wheels. We're not going to be inefficient. Like, let's talk about it. Even if it's uncomfortable for y'all, even if it's not how you normally do it, even if it's not what you expected me to say, right? Like, we're going to talk about it. And I think that's important, definitely in the corporate culture, because a lot of times people just get very comfortable in doing the same old, and what has quote unquote always worked. That may not be working now, and it's uncomfortable to change it, right? So I love the fact that when you brought this up about your daughter, because honey, she's like, listen, I know this is how you went to school. I know this is how you expected me to go to school. I know that you want me to just, follow in line, fit in, figure it out, right? And get into the system. But this does not reflect my values.
Mm-hmm.
And this does not reflect who I am in the way I need to learn. So we have to do something different. And I'm not going to stop bringing it up. Like, not going to stop bringing it up. I'm not, because you're not going to BAU me.
Listen, when we think about BAU, it is tied to historical data. It is not current. It may be outdated.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not to discredit the value of how things happened before, but it's about being open to doing something new. Mm-hmm. There also is value in BAU in a sense that it's predictable. It's also comfortable. Let's be quite honest.
Yeah.
If I had to parent who I was now that I've become an adult, in my head, that's easy. I can do this because I can see where the errors were or the missteps were. I could see how to make improvement. But it is challenging. I'm now having to take a risk and do something different. And that's how we have to be open to that when we're looking at our businesses. We can't be so tied to the historical that we're not open to kind of what the future may look like. Everyone has this, everyone's trying to be innovative now, right? Everyone wants to be new and cutting edge. However, if you are still tied to BAU and you don't allow people to move outside of that BAU, you will never move forward to this place of innovation. And so it's about removing kind of the emotional attachments that we have to business as usual, that space of comfort. Comfort feels good. It's easy. Like I said, it's predictable. And you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable and moving outside of the BAU. Of course, we don't want anyone to be out here making any type, just, reckless decisions. We want you to use the data that you have to assess, whether or not how to move forward and do something new. But you're going to have to do new things. You're going to have to make space for newness in your life, in your business, in your team. Having a new team member come on, what's the point of having a new team member come on if you're only going to do the things that you did the old way? Like, how are you growing? And so as leaders, we have to be mindful to not be so tied to BAU, especially as we're developing teams, bringing new people in. We have to make space for those new ideas. We have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. We have to be willing to take risks. And we have to have the confidence in ourselves and in our teams that we can still make good decisions in this new space, right? The good decision doesn't only live in BAU. Good decisions and wins also live in kind of the newness and the uniqueness and the innovation. So, definitely make sure that when you're looking at your teams that you're not so married to the BAU, business as usual approach, and you make space for the newness.
Yeah, I love that you said, the success is not just tied to BAU, right? Like, it's not just tied to business as usual. It's also tied to the innovation. And I think that, like, what is required in order to be the person who can say you're not going to BAU me, right? What's required is a certain level of assertiveness and confidence, right? And character, like I was talking about before with regard to leadership, which is why it ties right into the value, because most people would just go along with business as usual, right? Because you don't want to ruffle any feathers. Maybe you don't want to start any conflict, right? You don't want to potentially lose your job, right? You don't want to make people uncomfortable. So it's easier to do that, right? It's safer. It's safer to do that. But in order to really be the person who's going to, assert that you're not going to be a me, you have to be able to be willing to forego safety, which leaders always forego. Like, it's rarely safe for the leader, right? And so you really have to lean into leadership as a value and go first, right? Say the thing first, right? Make the change first. step off the path first, right? Because usually the path is business as usual.
Yep.
Right. If we think about even just becoming an entrepreneur in general, right? Business as usual is go to school, get a job, work until you retire, and then go do the things, right? That's business as usual. Mm-hmm. Even trying to figure out how to create income on your own from your ideas and from your mind is saying, you're not going to be a me, right? Mm-hmm. Deciding, you want to invest in real estate over investing in a 401k is saying you're not going to be a me, right? And so being a leader is required, but I also think what is really required is, being willing to forego the safety, because the employee at the nonprofit, he's willing to forego the safety, right? Avery is willing to forego the safety. She like, I'm okay. Like, this all good. I'm willing to forego the safety of being in class and being with my friends and being at the school where my brother is. And, I'm willing to forego all that.
Yes. And like in that regard, she's the leader. She is leading me down the path that worked for her. She's taking the risk and saying, these are the things that I need. This is how I want to show up. This is the type of space that I need. She is leading herself down the path for which works for her. Mm-hmm. And so now, as the leader of the family, I have to follow her lead, of course, with the added knowledge and expertise and resources that I have to clear a path for her so that she can down that way. And as challenging as it is for me to have to do something different, to step outside of the BAU, I'm also very, very proud of the fact that I have raised a person who is self-aware enough to say, this does not work for me. Because many times I can look at our lives where we said yes, where we meant no, or we stayed in places that we should have left. And at the age of 7, she's saying, this place does not work for me. Something has to change. And I hope that that's something that she can continue to hone and stand firm in, because we have to go where we are celebrated, not tolerated. In order for us to truly be happy. And I know, there are some people who are of the mindset that may say, well, you can't change every time something doesn't go your way. Watch me. Watch me change the environment. And there are different ways of changing the environment. Sometimes changing the environment is simply just speaking up, like your friend who's at the nonprofit. Change you have to be okay with change in order to step outside of BAU. You have to be willing to, as you mentioned, get those side eyes so that you can move forward, right? Like, nobody wants to be stagnant and stay in the same place, especially if that's a place where you're unhappy. And so moving or changing doesn't always mean quitting. It doesn't look like abandonment. Sometimes it looks like speaking up. But ultimately, sometimes you do have to change the environment that you're in so that you can be your best self.
And I suggest you, even when we're thinking about asserting that other people aren't going to business as usual, you also turn it back on yourself. Because business as usual within you as an individual looks a certain way. There are certain things that you do just because you've always done. And so it's important to also go internally and say, hey, like, are we doing this because it's business as usual? Are we thinking this because it's business as usual? Are we moving this way? Are we with this person because it's business as usual? Right? Like, and listen, me, you're not going to business as usual me. Me, you're not going to be a you me, because I know differently. I know better, right? I'm growing continuously. We were just talking about this earlier, how, at this point in our life, it's so hard to not be overproductive, right? And just be like so tied to like all doing so many things in the day and making that mean that we are accomplished and we have done the things, as opposed to doing 2 or 3 key things and deciding that that's enough. That's very hard to do at this stage in our life. And doing the former is business as usual. But we have decided, like, we're not going to BAU ourselves either, because, like you said earlier, is being you getting you what you want.
Right.
And that is being that version of ourselves isn't getting us what we want in this stage of our life. So we can't BAU ourselves either. So make sure that you're doing it both externally and internally, because a lot of times the external is a representation of the internal.
And sometimes it's little things. In this specific situation, you know, we don't oftentimes get to see our friends at work. We don't know all of the things that they're accomplishing day to day. And so BAU sometimes looks like only sharing or normally sharing the big accomplishments, sharing the promotion. You're not sharing, you know, that email that you were really struggling with writing. And then once you got it out and you got a favorable response, you may not always tell your friend that. However, in this entrepreneurial space that we live in, and us being accountability partners to one another, we are connecting more. And so I was sharing with INEZ that like I'm having a hard time feeling like I haven't been productive this week. And then as I began to run down the list of things that I accomplished, she was like, "Girl,
Come on.
you've done all of the things this week." And so BAU would be not even sharing all of the things that I've done and only sharing, you know, the feeling that I have of like feeling like I need to do more. And we could have rested in that, she could have rested in that space of being like, "Girl, I'm sure you've done a lot," you know, and it would not have helped me to move beyond. But for me to step outside of my BAU and to run down the list of things that I've done this week and share them with her, she's able to see all of the amount of work that goes into each one of those tasks, and is then able to kind of help me celebrate and completely get rid of this thought of like I haven't been productive this week, or not in the ways that I wanted to. But BAU would have been not sharing with my friend my task list for the week. And so this new space of entrepreneurship has definitely taken us outside of BAU, but there are very much some rewards that come with that, as we are able to support each other, especially during those difficult, challenging times that we may not have been able to easily have understood or even shared when we were in our, you know, traditional corporate 9-to-5 jobs.
Yeah, there's one last thing I want to share around BAU when it comes to parenting, right? Because I talked about earlier how like your kids are going to try the BAU. Okay, they're like, no, ma'am. But I think as millennials, right, and our generation, we are willing to allow them to push the envelope in ways that I think that previous generations are not. And even in taking the risk of being judged or shamed by previous generations about allowing them to take the risk and allowing them to lead the changes in their lives early in their life. But I think that what we need to lean into is the fact that we value leadership. We value leadership, and it's not just leadership in adults, it's leadership in children. And when you see your children leading themselves, right, you don't put it out like a flame, you add some fire to it, because in some way they can't fully express where they want to go, but they know the feeling in their body, right? They know what is okay for them and what's not, right? And helping them to build that trust in themselves looks like not BAUing them, right? That's what it looks like. It looks like saying, I'm not going to do business as usual with you. Like, I'm going to allow you to tell me what is the thing that may be wrong or doesn't work for you. I'm going to allow you to speak on it. I'm going to share as well. We're going to try to problem solve together, which isn't maybe what we grew up in, but it's this in valuing leadership across the board is something that we want to create for our children. One of the things my oldest daughter, is she like to ask questions, okay? And she's 4, but she asks questions like she's 30. So one day she told my mother, she was asking my mother a whole bunch of questions, and my mom was like, True, you asking Grandma too many questions. And she was like, well, Grandma, you can't stop nobody from asking you questions. And I was like, she's not wrong, okay? She's not wrong. She's not wrong. So you could just not answer them and say, I'm not answering, but you can't stop. So, but just allowing her to, because leaders ask questions, right? Like I was saying earlier, the guy at the nonprofit, he got questions. He's wondering, why are we doing this? What's the efficiency behind this? So I can't put that question fire out on her. I gotta help her hone it, right? Because business as usual would be like, just be quiet, right? Yep. Don't ask me no more questions. So I think it's important for us, in parenting to understand that we value leadership corporately, we value leadership personally, we value leadership in our friendships, and we should value leadership in our children at whatever age they're in, to allow them to also lean into their, you ain't gonna be me.
And listen, leadership doesn't have an age, right? And that's kind of what you're getting to. So the people who we expect leadership from is not only a title. The leaders aren't just your CEOs, they aren't just your presidents and your vice presidents, but what does leadership look like at the, account executive level? What does it look like at the administrative level? How are you creating space for people, or allowing space for people to move forward, to step outside of BAU so that the whole organization can move forward? So you can't only look at those who are older than you, who have more experience than you. You have to look to those who are coming behind you. You have to have an expectation of leadership from them too. And that extends all the way down to our children.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you're not going to BAU us, y'all. You're not going to BAU yourself either, okay?
That's right. Please share with us, what are some of the ways that you are stepping outside of BAU? What are the different areas in your life, whether it's in your corporate life, in your family? How are you stepping outside of BAU, and how do you allow space for others to do the same?
Yes, and we will see y'all in 2 weeks with another tip on top of the tip.